Hello, everybody. This is what I hope will just be a brief overview of your term paper assignment. I'm going to be looking at my notes here to make sure I cover what I'm trying to cover, so bear with me. Let's see. Let me hide my video and get going here. If you go to the left-hand menu on our course page and go down to the term paper tab, you can open that up, and you'll see a few documents. I think the first of which is the actual term paper or critical / integrative thinking student assignment sheet. That's Vincennes University speak for term paper. So the assignment itself is a 1,000 to 1,200 word research paper about the painting that you chose in week 1. So that's pretty straightforward. Plan to answer each of the questions or problems posed in the instruction. So we've got the detail list right below it here. What you have to do. Don't forget you'll need two sources too from the two good sources from the Vincennes library. And then the instructions here, the goals and instructions are sort of one and the same thing. But the instructions are basically this list of questions or problems that you need to address. So I would suggest answering these questions, addressing these questions as if someone were giving you a prompt. So in other words, you could write, I will now discuss the cultural and geographical location where the artist lived and created the work. Well, that's not very well worded. I'm just repeating that, but along those lines. And then you can sort of answer that question. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but you want to be accurate and not just state facts, but you want to interpret those facts. Okay, let me just scroll down and see if I've missed anything else. The idea is the framework is that you state a problem, you provide evidence, you talk about the influence. I've got my mouse cursor over that here. You talk about the influence of context and assumptions, your position, and then conclusions. And then again, here's another list of things that you need to talk about. So think about combining these lists. You don't have to do them in order if you don't want to, but do try to make it easy for your lowly reader, which is me, to make sure that you've covered everything. And you also want to make sure you've covered everything. Okay. And I also have, let me switch screens here to the, let's see, I guess I'll put my picture back up while I'm looking for it. All right, I made you a handy dandy student checklist. This is also my grading checklist. I think I gave yours has a different title. I might have forgotten to change it. But basically, here's the list of things that I copied from the assignment sheet. And you can use this checklist to make sure you've covered everything. And I have both the form and content aspect of it, and then also the essential considerations from the assignment sheet. Below that is what I'm calling minimum requirements. Now, up above, there's some leeway about how you've answered a particular question or concern and your level of sort of competence and thoroughness. But remember, the minimum requirements, not meeting those could result in severe penalties to your grade, like being under the word count, for instance, missing the deadline, especially at the end of the term where there's not a lot of time for me to get the grades in. Make sure you get it in on time. Having a minimum of 2 sources from the VU library is also critical. Proper academic English, for instance, is quite important. You don't want multiple errors per page. You might want to have somebody proofread this for you if you're not good at it. I'm actually not very good at proofreading my own writing, so it's good to have somebody else do it. Or use a program like Grammarly. Don't forget that Microsoft Word has quite a good built-in spelling and grammar checker. Let's see, proper academic English, I've got that. Don't forget the bibliography page in MLA or APA format. You'll want to use a 12-point Times New Roman font with 1-inch margins. I can easily, of course, do the word count, since you will be submitting in either doc or docx format. Don't use PDFs because that's hard for me to process and comment on, because I will be reviewing your paper and making comments in Word so you can see specific points of interest that I have mentioned. And then we've got total points. All right. And then the other thing I wanted to share with you, or at least, sorry. Yeah. I have a grading rubric from Vincennes, and this gives you an idea of expectation. So Vincennes has developed this rubric on a kind of sliding scale, a progression. So this level 6 is the best, accomplished, and then down to proficient, transitional, emerging, and inadequate. And this corresponds loosely, I won't be grading directly from this, corresponds loosely to the kind of grade you could expect to get. So average is really still considered to be pretty good. Just bear that in mind. That's still proficient. So in order to get a good grade on the paper, it will need to be pretty good. You'll need to be thorough, watch for mistakes, try to make your research as good as possible and your writing as clear and thorough as possible. But you can read the wording on this and see how the grade and the points would correspond to kind of levels of performance on this paper. I don't want to scare you, but this the rubric does give an interesting idea of what the tone and the writer's proficiency are in a given paper. My grading checklist gives you more specific details about what you need to cover, but this is kind of a qualitative approach to the grading process. And then finally, I won't pop this up on screen because let's see, I'm not sure that I can, but there is a sample APA paper actually written by Natalie Guy, who had taught this course in the past. And that is also on the left-hand menu of our course page under APA sample paper and APA guidelines. And I want you to note how Natalie quotes and cites sources. She both has citations in parentheses, and that's how you do it in APA and MLA, usually with the author's name followed by a page number. And so I would just want to point out, you can't just have the bibliography at the end of the paper or the works cited page, same thing. You need to cite those sources within the text specifically. So you can either quote from those sources or use your own words and cite from those sources. Either way, you need the citation in parentheses to show that you are adapting and borrowing the ideas, right, and reinterpreting the ideas too from the author. A general rule is to quote directly from your source when that author expresses an idea more effectively than you can, or more precisely and succinctly. There are times when you can quote from sources instead of just citing. And I just want to emphasize the difference. Quoting is when you put something in quotation marks and you directly use someone else's written material. You still need to cite that by putting the information about that author in parentheses after your quotation, but a difference though, a citation itself does not necessarily have quoted material. So you can cite a work and just reformulate the wording, interpret the wording, and put the citation in parentheses. So there's quoting and there's citing. They're not exactly the same thing. And I probably confused you there, but a quotation does need a citation in parentheses, but a citation does not need a quotation. I can clarify that more. You don't actually need ever to quote directly any of your sources if you don't want to. I think you'll often find that those sources you're using have lots and lots of quotable material that you'd like to use. But you don't have to use it. But if you're using someone else's ideas, borrowing their ideas, adopting their ideas, you'll want to cite. Now, on that note, though, avoid quoting easily verifiable or well-known facts. My example is Luncheon on the Grass was painted by Edward Manet and was completed in 1863. This is just sort of a general, well-known sort of Wikipedia fact that you would not need to cite unless there was some sort of controversy about when he specifically completed this painting before it was exhibited, say. So you don't have to, unless there's some controversy or ambiguity, you don't have to cite things that are very straightforward, like the title of the work of art or the artist's name or where it was painted, that sort of thing. And I would also, let's see, don't cite more than 10% quoted or sorry, don't quote more than 10% of the time in your paper. So in a 1,000-word paper, you should not have more than 100 words of quoted material, because then it seems like you're padding your word count with someone else's word. Be a little careful about that. And it depends on the quality of the author's writing that you're using, I guess. And you could always ask me if you feel this is sort of a borderline issue. Okay, as always, let me know if you have any questions, and I hope this helps. Read the term paper assignment itself for the most information. It is a little, I've adapted that from a Vincennes University document, and that is a little confusing, but I was trying to keep their format. So let me know if you have any troubles, and I wish you luck with your term paper. Thank you.